walk on the water. That's what our passage is going to be looking at today, the very well-known passage in Matthew where Jesus walks on the water, and then so does Peter. Before we get into that passage, I'll just set the scene a little bit, where another famous, well-known story of Jesus, that he's fed the 5,000 people with no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish. Where in that event, understandably, people are blown away because Jesus effectively created something, not out of nothing necessarily, but created a lot more out of a little bit. And what we can learn from that, in that Jesus is connections with the Father, in that when creation happened at the beginning of time, he was there and a part of that. So let me read to you Matthew 14, verse 22. Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. And after he had dismissed them, he went on to the mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid. Beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You have little faith," he said. "Why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Now, I'm not necessarily much of a boat person. Having said that, 2 weeks' time we're going on a cruise, so we'll go figure. First time on a cruise, and not normally, I'm not concerned about boats, but when we think about water, for me, my experience is more about being in the pool. Now, recently, my kids have been doing Learn to Swim at school, as part of the program, and look, they're very eager. Like, most weekends, they're like, "Dad, can we go to the pool? We want to show you what we've done." I'm like, "Oh, gee, it's expensive, kids." But they're very eager to show me what they have learnt, because they've come such a long way. See, when they were little, a lot littler than this, I'm talking like 1-year-old, 2-year-old children, I would hold them in the pool, obviously, because it's about yay deep and they'd be drowning if I didn't. But they would be petrified. And not only would I be holding them, they would be holding onto my neck and shoulders for their dear little lives. And I would be constantly saying, "It's all right, I've got you. No, I won't let you won't let my head go under the water. No, I won't let your head go under the water." Maybe a couple of times, whoops. But never on purpose. And I would be always reassuring them, "I've got you. I'm going to protect you. I love you. And you can trust me." We'll get into that a little bit later. From this passage, there's a few observations that I'd like to draw out today, following this, the theme of our series at the moment about Uncharted. And all of it is around that concept of being called to something and responding. One observation is that God's call can be uncomfortable. Kind of hate to say it, but it's true. We read in verse 22, at the very start, "Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd." Now, most kind of think of, when we talk about, if I said, "Hey, in this passage, what is the calling bit?" we're all probably going to go to, oh, that's the bit where Peter got out of the boat. And I get it. That's the exciting bit. That's the miraculous aspect. But we shouldn't necessarily overlook that the calling happens when Jesus says, get in the boat. When we read that verse, there's no, hey, can you, what do you think about it? Maybe some of you go on the boat and the others, if you want to walk around the shore, that's okay. It's very much get in the boat. Now, a little bit of context there. We know that some of our disciples are fishermen. So, boat for them, yeah, whatever. But not all of them. And in that day of first century Israel, there's a lot of fear and connotations with water being where like evil spirits dwelt. So there's an aspect of like going out into the lake for us, well, it's definitely not going to be the same as me going on a cruise in 2 weeks' time. I'm not going to be too concerned about the waves on Port Phillip Bay. But going on a little boat with 12 or so people, where some of them are like, well, I can't swim, and if this thing tips, I'm in trouble. To then have that wind and the waves rocking that boat, they knew that they were in for potentially a bit of a scary time. So that responding to the call is firstly all 12 of them, but it's that go, get in the boat, and it was a little uncomfortable. Let alone the fact that Jesus doesn't actually say, I want you to go to this town. He says the other side, and we could dwell into that because when Mark says the other side, he normally means like the side where the Israelites don't live, and that's where the Samaritans are. And again, that's a destination that you don't want to go. But very much, if we're looking at the words in this text, it's very much a one-step process. You're going to get in the boat and go across the other side. What then? No idea. Instructions don't go that far. And that's not necessarily unlike some of the call that we have. Most of us would want to know what step 1 is, right? Step 2, step 3, maybe even step 4. But it doesn't work that way. And that's where it becomes uncomfortable. I don't know about what your experience is with discomfort, but I think our human condition is that we don't like it. I'm not saying to do this, but if you were to get your index finger and just jab it into the person's ribs next to you, it's pretty quickly they're going to knock it away, move, because it's uncomfortable. I'm not a parent of a teenager. I remember what it was like to be a teenager 10 years ago. And it's hard to get out of the bed Saturday morning. Why? It's comfortable. What's out of the bed? Not comfortable. It's our human condition to want to get into a state of comfort, but responding to a call doesn't necessarily work that way. The next observation from this passage I have is that Jesus is close the whole time. But the disciples don't know it. We read verse 23. After he, that's Jesus, had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from the land, buffeted by the waves, because of the wind was against it. So here we've got Jesus on a mountainside that overlooks, they say lake, that's the Sea of Galilee. Those words are interchangeable. And albeit it's night time, but clearly he's able to make out where the boat is. He knows obviously how to find them when early at dawn the next day. But while Jesus is distant, he's never far away. And albeit with those 12 people in the boat literally looking at their immediate surrounds, there's wind, there's rain, perhaps there's the rain, there's waves going into the boat, there's the I can't see beyond the next 5 minutes because I don't know when this storm is going to end. That's them in their immediate surrounds. But Jesus is not far. I know that there are, in a room this size, chances are that there are people going through a storm right now. It might be a storm financially. It might be with a relational, like a relationship. Or it might be the storm of someone that's very close to you that is encountering that. There's so many health concerns that people are going through, treatments for long-term illnesses that we don't know how that will end and play out. If I can encourage you to know that while Jesus in that storm may not feel like he is there, he's never far. And that's not just my words, but we read that in Hebrews 13:5. Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. God is always there. The next observation, you might go, oh, duh. But it was Peter who Jesus called. Bringing out the high intelligent comments and observations today on it. Let's read. Verse 28, Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, Jesus said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. See, what I notice here is that, like, Peter walking on the water is his idea. Something inside him goes, if that's you, Jesus, call me to come to you. What Peter didn't have is a, hey, I'll do that too, and give it a crack on his own steam. He had the idea. He effectively prayed about it. He sought Jesus' opinion and thoughts. Jesus said, come. And Peter responded. That's in a very, very base level. It's not on his own, certainly not on his own power. It's not necessarily because he had the greatest abilities or faith. We don't have any record or stories of Peter walking on, that great little party trick. Hey, everyone, watch this. There's nothing like that where we see that it happens again. It's a call in that moment, and he responds. We note from that Jesus didn't call the other disciples. He said, yes, you come, and a lot of you. Come on out. The call was specific to Peter. That's not unlike my experience in the church or my relationship with God. That there can be calls that are for you. But not you, that's theirs. You'll have a different call. You'll have a call, but that'll be different to you. And that'll be different to you. God calls each and every one of us to be in relationship with him. That invitation is always there. But I am talking more specifically about certain things that he lays on our hearts to do. Key takeaway here is that when we follow, God can do so much more than what we can ever imagine or conceive to be possible. The next observation is that Jesus forgives us when we fall, when we fail. We read in verse 30, but when Peter saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You have little faith, he said. Why did you doubt? Now, I don't know about you, but the way I've read, or the tone that I've understood Jesus' words to be, have been a little bit different over my journey. So when I first read this passage, I'm talking like 20, 30 years ago, I kind of felt like Jesus was angry. And look, maybe he was. I felt like there was a idiot. Why don't you have faith? Because I kind of think, well, fair go. The guys just walked on water. Like no one else did. Got the 11 guys back in the boat. They didn't even ask. They didn't even think of it. And not to necessarily insert my experience or character into what Jesus would be, but I can't help but think back to my experiences with my kids in the pool. It's like, kids, I've got you. I'm not going to drop you. You're not going to drown. Have faith in my ability that when I say I'm going to hold you, I'm going to hold you. I love you. I don't want bad things to happen to you. Yet, if I'm honest, when they used to persist in that, like, no, Daddy, I'm scared. It's okay, I've got you. No, Daddy, I don't want to. Please, just like you won't let me go, will you? It's like, no, I won't. I honestly found myself getting a little bit frustrated with that because, like, I've told you once, I'm not going to drop you. So I kind of think, well, maybe I'm not going to be quite so harsh on Peter now as what I thought Jesus used to be. I kind of go, you know what? You gave it a go. And understandably, you got a little bit distracted by the immediate surrounds. You kind of thought, I'm not too sure how this is how on earth is this happening? But Jesus is there to catch him. And in a similar way, he's there to catch us. If we have received a call and we respond, and guaranteed we'll get to scenarios where we go, I don't know what to do now. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I don't know if I should throw in the towel or make a bad decision along that pathway. We can always know that Jesus will forgive us, set us back on our feet, and say, hey, keep going. Go again. Now, quite often, we can think of, when we think of a call, realistically, it's all about how we respond. Because the call is not a call, really, until it becomes a response to a call. And in our own worlds and mindsets, we can think, well, look, gee, there are, if you call it, greats of people who have responded to God's call. I could never be like them. We might think immediately of someone like Billy Graham. Gee, no, couldn't do that. Billy Graham went to, I'm going to say probably like every country on earth to preach the gospel and impacted so many lives through the words he speaks and through the Spirit talking and using him for that. I could never do that. Or we might think of someone like William Wilberforce, if we've seen the movie Amazing Grace from a few years ago. We'll remember that story where he was an English politician and he had that call on his heart to do what he could to end the African slave trade. Could never do that. Or Martin Luther King in the US with the civil rights movement between African Americans and the white population, ultimately being assassinated for what he was doing in that space. And we could think, surely, I could never do that. Maybe more recently, Mother Teresa, who gave dedicated decades of her life to the poorest of the poor in the slums of India. I could never do that. I'm not like Mother Teresa. I could never have that much of an impact. However, there are people in our church community having an impact. Let's not worry about comparing big ones of these, what we might call the ministry elite. People in our own community are making a difference. A few weeks ago, earlier this month, we had 300 plus shoeboxes over here for Operation Christmas Child. Now, I don't know exactly how Operation Christmas Child started in our church. It's over a decade ago. And I'm pretty sure that no one ever thought at that point in time that we will have 300 plus shoeboxes. I think I remember us getting to 100 shoeboxes and going, wow, that's 100 kids. That's like 4 classrooms of kids opening up a box, getting a whole bunch of stuff that they would quite likely never have had before, and making a difference on their lives right there and then. I think if we only had 100 boxes, we'd be disappointed. Such is the momentum that it's got, that at least 300 shoeboxes each year that we pack. And that's thanks to, led by Nina, and she talked a few weeks ago about some of the challenges that she encountered this year about doing Operation Christmas Child and different things in her family's life that just kind of got in the way with injuries and accidents and other events happening. But God prevailed. We saw the announcement a couple of earlier today about the ping pong-a-thon that's happening. Now, at some point in time, now Nathan's led that in our church community. Now, we know that he didn't invent ping pong-a-thon, but through the course of his journey, something caught light in his heart to go, we can make a difference. We can do ping pong. As Simon said, you stand there and do this. Maybe a little bit more active than that if you want to win a game. But it's just so easy, it just might work. And there's thousands of dollars that have been raised by people in our church community and others who have been brought in to that to make a difference for the people who have been caught up in the slave trade in various countries. Now, the clothing hub's been going for a few years now. At some point in time, and look, I mentioned these people, and I'm sure that some are probably going, oh, I'm embarrassed. And I don't want to necessarily, point big shining lights necessarily on people, but I just want to give examples for, the people that we know. Well, maybe we could, maybe God's not done with us just yet. But there was a few years ago where Carol made a choice to leave her job to come and work in the church space for Christians Against Poverty at the time. Now, again, without, long story short, there was a few conversations or becoming aware of different things, and went, you know what, there's a spark that lit in her heart to say, I think we could do something to really make a difference with the people in Hobart who are either experiencing homelessness or having to flee family domestic violence situations. We can make a difference. I think we can do that. And sure enough, that's what's happening. There were hiccups. There were bumps along the road. There will be more bumps. And sometimes, hey, there's a stack of clothes in the back there, not to point out the obvious, but there's things that are evolving the whole time. Because someone said, I'll respond to that call and we'll make a difference. I'm going to play a movie clip. As you wish. That was the only thing Wesley said. Now, those tasks that he was given was his job. They weren't necessarily huge. They weren't outside of his abilities, but his response every time, as you wish. His obedience demonstrated his love. We can respond the same. Now, we've talked about the big things, the big people in history who have made a difference for the world. They might be too big. Now, let's not consider them just yet. And we might think of other people that we in our church community, we think, I could never do that. But maybe God might call you to send a message or a phone call to someone. He might lay that person on your heart to go, I think I haven't spoken to Bob for a little while. Just go and see how he's going. as you wish. We might get a sense that God's calling us to go and talk to that new person at church who's standing there by themselves. I'm not very good with new people. I don't know what to say. I mean, what about if they, as you wish. God might give you a little nudge to say, hey, I reckon you could probably help out a little bit around the church. Look, you could probably help out in the kitchen, making some morning tea, maybe on the door, just welcoming people with a smile and shaking their hand. Oh, but I don't know if I'm really that much of a good cook, and I see the things that some people might make in there, and I'd embarrass myself. As you wish. Before hearing about the ping pong-a-thon, there might have been something inside that you went, yeah, I could do that. Oh, gee, I don't really know anyone else around, or who, what difference would I make? I don't want to ask people for money and sponsoring, and as you wish. Got a few more. There could be something that you go, you know what, maybe there's that someone that neighbour who I know needs some help, and look, I could probably do something practical for them and cook for them. But if I ask them and say, I know that they're going to say no, don't worry about it, or you could just spring it on them, as you wish. You may have been here for a little while and thinking, you know what, maybe next steps might be for me. But I don't know what happens. What happens if I get asked a question? I don't know the answer. Might look silly. I don't want to look silly. As you wish. I feel like God has called me to build a home group and maybe invite a few people to my house. Oh, no, I couldn't do that. I don't know where to start. I don't know what, I don't know that much about the Bible. And what about if I say something stupid or that makes me look like I'm a dum-dum? As you wish. But keep going. How are you going to respond? See, following God's call could look something like saying hello to someone. Or it could be as big as leaving your job and moving overseas to work in an orphanage. And anywhere in between. But what I know is, and what we can see in our passage this morning, is that call will probably be an element of discomfort. There will be something that makes us want to say no. But if we say yes and we step forward, God's going to be there. He will never leave us to do His work by ourselves or in our own strength. I can guarantee you that we will make a mistake and we will fail, but we know that God is going to forgive us for that. He's not expecting perfection, He's expecting obedience. But the other thing I can guarantee you is that He can do so much more than we can ever imagine. We look a little bit before about 100 shoeboxes going, that's great, and now it's 300. Go back however many years and think we could do 300 shoeboxes, I think there would have been laughter. I know from a personal sense, being called to lead next steps here, I've met so many people here who I never would have thought would have possible. That's not me. That's God bringing people through the door. And I've got the privilege of connecting them into the church somehow. There is something that God wants to do through you. I don't know what that is. But what I can say is that if you say yes, the end result will be so much bigger than what you can imagine. But the choice is yours, whether we want to respond. We can sit back in the boat. We can watch others But if we sit in the boat, we'll never walk on water. Let's pray. God, we thank you so much that you are always there with us. We thank you that you never leave us, you never forsake us. And then when you call us to do your work, you're right there beside us. God, we thank you that you've got that patience with us. We thank you that you know that it's uncomfortable. But God, I pray that we'll each be able to move past that and recognize that you are calling us each into something so much greater. But God, in all of the ministry that you do through us, in us, we point the glory back to you, knowing that it's only possible through you. In Jesus we pray. Amen.